So the question was, well, is it because the act of pulling something out robs it of value? There's some of that. Is it in fact that there isn't anything there? That is true with some of the books. I think the real issue is that, in fact, the statements they're making are true. And the problem we have, or a lot of people have, is when they see something true, they want to grab onto that and use that. But knowing something true actually doesn't do you any good. It's only the starting point. And most people look at it as the point to get to. As I work through this, I try to understand it, and now I've got some principle that I can use. And it doesn't work that way. An idea only succeeds if it starts engagement with the problem. So let me come to the driving issue here, which has to do with creativity. I believe, and as I've seen this, creativity is very widespread. It is all over the place. I don't even think that it is the central problem. I don't think it's the problem at all. The chief problem are the systemic and the cultural forces that block creativity. It's far easier for people to think about how to block creativity than it is to be creative. That's because they're doing that all the time. And our issue is, how do we get rid of the blocks? So I'm going to take 5 different areas and try to assess what I think are some of the issues with blocks. The first one has to do with self-assessment. And I mentioned Toyota, and I didn't say, I was cutting short, but there's silicon graphics related to something really stupid. And you say, why do people do those stupid things? And one thing you commonly hear is hubris. Hubris is not an explanation. All right? That's a label for something, but it's not an explanation. I knew a lot of the people in the various companies, and the one thing I found in almost all cases is they were not introspective. They were not deeply introspective. Most people have this binary thing. If I'm successful, what I'm doing must be right. If I'm not successful, what I'm doing must be wrong. All right, that's a kind of self-assessment. It's very shallow. It isn't the way things work. And people don't like to do self-assessment. If you think about the term self-aware, if you'd ask a group of people if they're self-aware, then everybody would say, well, they're self-aware because they're aware of themselves. But if you ask somebody, do they know somebody who is not self-aware, then you all know people who are not self-aware. And the math doesn't add up here, of course. But the reason is there are 2 different meanings to self-aware. One of them is that you are aware of your being a self. And the other one is the person kind of clueless as to what's happening? And that's a different kind of thing. So when we talk about self-assessment, for most companies, they've got this shallow thing like, well, I'm a company, I sell products, and that's kind of the level of the awareness. The real issue, though, is what are the things that we're clueless about? What are the things that we can't see? Now, I put them in different buckets. I found, for instance, that when I left school and I was one of the people in the organization, and I had a certain kind of view into personal things and problems that were there. But as my position changed, I found that there were certain kind of problems that were no longer visible to me. That is, bad behavior is something that I no longer see anymore, because people won't behave badly in front of me. And what I found is that some people are unaware of this change, that they no longer have visibility into their people because they think that they haven't changed. And the problem isn't they haven't changed, it's their position has changed, which means their view has changed. So those are kind of things that are there, but they're just a little harder to see, so you have to use other clues to get at it. But there are other things that we can't see because of the complexity of the organization, or fundamental things that none of us can see. And unless we're looking for those, and looking very carefully, we won't see them. And we'll draw the wrong conclusions from our success. And as you become more successful, it gets harder and harder to find what the threats are. In fact, I'd say it is impossible to get a complete picture, and you have to start from that point of view. And accept the fact that there are things that we can't see. Now, it isn't that a company needs to stare at its navel all the time, but once in a while, it's important to dig very deeply and be aware that most people are resistant to that process. It's like taking medicine. They know it's good for you, but they don't want to do it. Okay, the next topic has to do with the dynamics of honesty. We have at Pixar something that we've developed which is called the Brain Trust. And it's our filmmakers who act as a group, it's like a self-help group for each other. And this is not the way Hollywood normally works. It's very hierarchical in Hollywood where the head of the studio gives directions on down. And there's an ill thing has happened in this industry where the filmmakers then are trying to cut themselves off from the studio because they don't want the interference. So you've got this strange dynamic. From our point of view, it's just a bad way of working. So the executives don't tell them what has to go in the movies. They tell each other how to do things. But what they're trying to do is to solve the problems, because the problems are so difficult that you can get lost in them, and they do get lost in them. What they have are friends and partners who help them see their way through the making of a difficult film or of a difficult product. Well, the operation of this group is extremely important to us as a company, so we have to watch the dynamics. So what are the dynamics? Well, one of them is that the group has no authority. Now this is counterintuitive to most people, but it is absolutely vital to their operation that they not have authority over each other, because then they can give notes and they can take notes from each other in the spirit of making what they're doing good. I'm not worried about somebody's making me do something or some power thing that happens in groups. They're very honest with each other, but it's more difficult to be honest when there are more people in the room. So watching the dynamics means that if we have a difficult problem, we have to take it down to 6 people. If things are going well, we'll take it up to 25 people because we want to train people on how the process works. And usually you can't tell in the meetings, it's after you realize, oh, that did not go well or that went well. And then we may have to reassemble with a smaller group. But our job as the managers is not to go and show how good we are and saying what the product should be, what the film should be. Our job is to just protect that dynamic. Is that right? Are the right things happening? There are all kinds of threats having to do with the size, the composition. The main important thing is that they're honest and that their friends are supporting each other. Now, I talk about honesty, that's obviously one of those things that really is obvious, so there isn't any point to be made there. It's not insightful to say that. The issue is not, you say to a group you need to be honest with each other, because they agree with that. The issue for us when watching the dynamics is what are the blocks to the honesty? Because there are real blocks to honesty. One is that people want to be polite with each other and not offend them, so they won't say what they think. Or they respect the person and don't want to encounter what they say. Another is that people don't want to embarrass themselves in a large group, or they don't want to lose control, or it's not safe. So these are all real human things, and these are what we have to watch for, because as soon as any one of them rise, it blocks and gets in the way of the creativity of the group. And here's the issue for us, the thing we have to watch, is while we're watching very carefully for this senior group, this experienced group, our problem has to do with middle managers. All right, middle managers are new at managing. They have a lot of responsibility. They don't want things to go wrong. And they know the principles of the company, but because of insecurities or inexperience, they will subconsciously signal to people that they don't want to get embarrassed or they don't want to have the truth. All right, and this is what frequently happens in meetings, and you all know it, you all see it. People are very sensitive to what the managers say, and they're looking for those cues. And the higher you up, the more they read into the cues. And then the permission to be honest is not about telling people to be honest. The permission has to be given by the managers. We try to, very hard to make it okay for people to